So I wanted to talk about some of the objectives for today. So hopefully we will be able to cover all of this. The first one is how disclosure fits with the IPS model, sharing permissions and disclosure. We will be presenting a few examples of disclosure today. We will cover who should be involved with disclosure, when should disclosure be discussed, why clients want or do not want disclosure, other considerations with disclosure, and we will be sharing various resources. So, as you all know, disclosure is an important aspect of the IPS supported employment model. Page 89 of the IPS supported employment manual says the IPS definition of disclosure is employment specialists provide clients with accurate information and assist with evaluating their choices to make an informed decision regarding what is revealed to the employer about having a disability. And as you all know, there are 4 components to disclosure for the IPS model. Those are, the first one is employment specialists do not require all clients to disclose their psychiatric disability at the work site in order to receive services. 2, employment specialists offer to discuss with clients the possible cost and benefits of disclosure at the work site in advance of clients disclosing at the work site. Employment specialists describe how disclosure relates to requesting accommodations. Employment specialist role in communicating with the employer. The third component is employment specialists discuss specific information to be disclosed and offer examples of what could be said to employers. And the fourth component is employment specialists discuss disclosure on more than one occasion. So disclosure gives employment specialists or other advocates permission to talk to others on behalf of the client. Disclosure refers to either employment specialists sharing information with the employer about the client for purposes of helping him or her to get a job or obtain supports to be successful at work. Or 2, the client sharing information about himself or herself with an employer or in conjunction with the employment specialist for the purposes of getting a job or obtaining supports in order to be successful at work. The specifics of the information that is shared with employers depends on the client's individual needs and preferences, and it can range from just general information about the client's participation in a specific program, or it could be more specific information about a client's symptoms. And what is really important, well, all of this is important, but clients have autonomy and they should be given enough information so that they are able to make an informed choice about how they want to disclose, if any, or what they want to disclose. So, needing accommodations for jobs or school or other social situations is the #1 reason for disclosure. Most people choose to share information so that they can ask for accommodations on a job or school or for other settings. Some, however, may choose to share information because they are proud of having overcome barriers to employment. On the other hand, other people do not disclose because they are concerned about stigma and do not believe this information is pertinent to working. All right. So, since the primary reason why most clients choose to disclose is because of a need for accommodations, we have a short quiz for you on this subject that has just 8 questions. So what I want to try to figure out is how many on the call today can see the screen, or I should say, how many of you on the call today cannot see the screen? So if you can unmute your phone to let me know if you are not able to see the screen. Because when we take the quiz, I was going to have everybody type their answers into the chat box. All right.
It looks like there's about,
see the screen.
It looks like there's about 8 people on the call, on their phones, Felicia. 8 people.
8 people on their phones. Okay. What we'll do then, because I want to give everybody a chance to answer the questions, the first 4 questions that we'll ask will be maybe more than that. Let me do the first 6 questions. I'll do just for the people that are able to type their answers into the chat box. And the last 2 questions will be for the people that only have, are able to use the phone and not see the quiz on the screen. And then, so for the people that are able to type in the chat box, what I will do is I will read the question and you will see the question as well. And the first person who answers with the correct answer into the chat box will get a round of applause. And now when we get to the phone portion, it'll be the same. The first person who speaks the correct answer will also get that round of applause. And please do not type your answer into the chat box until the entire question has been read. So let me pull something up here. First question, the ADA forces employers to hire unqualified individuals with disabilities. Is that a myth or fact? Oop, Deborah, okay. No, first. All right, Deborah got that right. So that first one is a myth. Thank you. Here we go. Second question, when there are several qualified applicants for a job and one has a disability, the ADA requires the employer to hire that person. Is that a myth or fact? Oops, wait, uh-oh, who answered first? That was,
Kalinda, maybe?
I'm sorry?
Is the answer myth from Kalinda?
Yes, oh yes, and that was the first one, so get a round of applause there. Good job. Good job, thank you. All right. Third question. The ADA doesn't give job applicants with disabilities advantages over those without disabilities. Is that a myth or a fact? Oh, it looks like, did Cheryl get that?
Again.
Cheryl? Okay. All right, good job. Thank you, thank you. You guys are doing great. Oh, I'm sorry, wait, I'm sorry. Who said that first? That was a fact. I am sorry about that. Who got that one right?
So Angela Sutter got that one right first. She got fact first.
Sorry about that. I didn't scroll up enough. Thank you. Yep, it was fact. All right, the
Angela.
Fourth question. Under the ADA, employers must give people with disabilities special privileges known as accommodations. Is that a myth or fact? Yep. That is a myth.
That was Elise.
Hey, thank you. All right.
No, it wasn't.
Felicia?
Hmm.
Is that one?
That one's a myth because it's not they're required to give them special privileges.
Exactly. Want me to go back to that one? Yeah. Yeah, special privileges is the key. And you guys will all have these PowerPoints too. All right, we're going to move to the 5th question here. And this is providing accommodations for people with disabilities is expensive. Myth or fact? Yep. I think was Lisa first? That was a myth.
I think it was Deborah.
Thank you. Good job. Good job, everybody. All right, so question. The ADA places a financial burden on small businesses that can't afford to make accommodations for individuals with disabilities. Myth or fact? Looks like, did Deborah get that one? It is myth.
Martin got that first.
I'm sorry, who did?
Martin.
Okay, awesome. Great job. Okay, good job, everybody. Now, what I want to do is offer this to the individuals. We have 2 more questions for the individuals that only can use the phone option. And see if you're interested. And if you want to unmute your phone, you can either hit the unmute button or you can do *6 on your phone. So okay, we're going to ask this question. The ADA protects employees who have difficult or rude personalities or are troublemakers. Is that a myth or fact? Does anybody want to call in? Okay. All right. Let me see. Who was the first one to type? Yeah, I was going to ask about the chat box. Who did you just type first, Trace or Maria? So I don't think we're getting any phone calls.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great job. All right, and we will offer the next question, or I'm sorry. Yep, that was myth. So we're going to offer, or the last question here, we will offer this to the people that have phone to see if anybody would like to answer that. And if there's nobody that responds, then you all can feel free to type into the chat box. Under the ADA, an employer can't fire an employee who has a disability. Myth or fact? Well, yeah. Yep, you guys got it. Myth. All right, thank you. And I know I went fast through those slides, but you all will have a copy of the PowerPoint. If you are not able to upload that, we can email that to you, so just let us know at the end of the presentation. But you all did great. Thank you. All right. We are going to talk about examples of information to be discussed as far as disclosure. So some types of examples of information that can be discussed include involvement with the mental health agency, previous employment, symptoms, and possibly legal background. There's other information that can be included as well. We don't recommend, including their diagnosis or the medications they take or whether they're currently using drug or alcohol, or if they're doing that right now or have a history of it. We don't feel that is pertinent to the job search. Again, one of the main reasons again for sharing information or disclosing is for accommodation purposes. We always recommend that a client or advocate only share the very minimum information that is needed for that specific accommodation. So the general rule under the let me go to the next screen. The general rule under the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, is that a person does not have to disclose until an accommodation is needed. Ideally, employers should disclose and request accommodations before performance problems arise. That can be during the application process, during the interview process, the first day of work, or even years down the road. There is no need to disclose the diagnosis and no need to disclose specific medications that a client has taken, and again, no need to disclose alcohol or drug usage. If a person needs an accommodation for a job, they should only share the minimum information for the purposes, again, of getting an accommodation for the job. So, for example, a person may need to have extra breaks while working. That person does not need to say what their diagnosis is or does not need to say what medications they are on. They could, however, say that they have some anxiety and that is why they may need an extra break here or there. However, throughout the process, the employment specialist and the client should always stress the client's strong points and attributes for the job and be very minimal or put very minimal emphasis on the reason for the accommodation. So always stress, the positives more than anything with the accommodations. All right, so who does disclosure involve? I'm going to throw this question out to the audience. If you guys could either type in the chat box, but tell me who do you think is involved in disclosure decisions? Yep, good. The candidate, client, NES, yep. Anybody else? Okay, the client, yes. HR? Yes, sometimes, yeah, when it gets to the employer. Yes. Thank you, Martin. Potentially family member, yes. If there's a guardian, yes. Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Previous employers, good, good, good. Client and or guardian, NES. All right, thank you all. All right, so yes, I think you said most of these. So client, employment specialist, employers, past and present, family members, friends of the client, and coworkers. These are people that can be involved if the client wants them to be. Obviously the client, but anybody else, it's all up to the client and what they would like. It's always their wishes. So when thinking about disclosure, you do need to figure out who should the information be disclosed to. Will it be disclosed to employers? Will it be disclosed to others? Also, when working with the client, you need to decide who will make the disclosure, the client, the employment specialist, or will it be the client and the specialist together? While decisions about disclosure are ultimately up to the client, the employment specialist should also encourage the client to get input from other significant people in their life if appropriate and if that's what the client wants, such as team members or family. For example, the client may want the employment specialist to be with him or her and to see a potential employer together. In this case, having a clear plan and doing some role plays will be very helpful for both the client and the employment specialist. This decision can be changed at any time in the process. A client may initially decide to search for jobs without having the employment specialist make any contacts with employers, but then they may change their mind 3 months later. Clients may secure a job having made all the contacts on their own, and then they may change their mind about disclosure when they need assistance from the employment specialist at work for maybe a complicated work situation. All right, so when should disclosure be discussed? If any of you have ideas, if you want to type those into the chat box. On hire, yes, definitely. Yes, from the onset, during intake, yes. When the client's ready, initial appointment, yes. Intake, job start, job support, after job start, great. All this time, yes. Yes, you guys are just very, very good at the beginning of intake. Perfect. So, I think you said most of these. So, and one of you said all of the time, and so disclosure is a continuous discussion throughout the employment process. Of course, at the very beginning, when completing the vocational profile and the intake, that is when the employment specialist and client are getting to know each other. And this is a time that the employment specialist should be educating the client about what disclosure is, including the pros and cons and the specifics about disclosure, and giving examples to the client about specific scenarios. And then ultimately letting the client decide what is best for them. Also, as mentioned in here as well, when completing the job search plan and completing the job support plan, disclosure should be discussed. When applying for jobs. And this could change depending on each employer that the client applies to. One reason that this could change is that the client may need accommodations for maybe one specific job, but may not need it for other jobs that they apply to. So this could definitely change each time the client applies for various jobs. Also, disclosure should be discussed when responding to inquiries from job applications with employers, when preparing for interviews, and upon hire and needed job support during, when they start a job with an employer. So, when they get hired, they do need accommodations. This would definitely be the time to bring those up. And the employment specialist services while working on the job. This is a time too that disclosure about working with the employment specialist would need to come up. So thanks, you guys. You did great. All right. What are some reasons that clients may choose to disclose? If anybody wants to type some of those into the chat box. Personal reason, yep, good. Be understood and accommodated, yes. Feel more confident, yes. If they need support during an interview or onboarding, yes, definitely. Very good. All right. So there are many reasons why clients may choose to disclose. Obviously, as we've said, the primary reasons is if they need job accommodations to help them on their job. But when a client is working with the employment specialist, and they choose for the employment specialist to acknowledge that they're working with the client to employers, Then the employment specialist is able to introduce and advocate for clients on behalf of the client to prospective employers, and they're able to describe the client's strengths and how that person would be a good fit for the company. Also, the employment specialist could then attend interviews on the client's behalf if the client wants that. Client may also need help with work when they're hired. So that may involve job coaching or just some off-site job coaching. But if the client has given permission for the employment specialist to be involved with them, the employment specialist could then help them on the job. Also, if the client does get hired and they have given the employment specialist permission to contact the employer, then if there are any issues that come up on the job, the employment specialist could then contact the employer and work together with the client and the employer to help resolve those issues. And then ultimately, the employment specialist can help clients to be successful at work because of direct collaboration between the client and the employer. But again, I'm going to stress throughout this, it's always the client's choice whether they want to disclose or what they want to disclose. And what are some reasons a client may not want to disclose? Do you want to type any of your answers into the chat box? Stigmas, definitely. Feeling different from coworkers, worried about getting blamed for things, yes. Embarrassed, yes. Okay, great. Thank you. So, of course, one of and yep, Jesse said good old-fashioned embarrassment, blame for things made fun of. Yes, very good, very good. So, of course, one of the reasons that they may not disclose is because they may not have to. They may not have a need for an accommodation or need for assistance, so they may not need to disclose. But the primary disadvantages of disclosure from the client's perspective is that it may involve acknowledging the presence of a stigmatizing condition, as you all have mentioned, embarrassment, as you have mentioned, and once they do acknowledge the presence of a condition, they may fear a risk of rejection, a risk of being discriminated against, and social disapproval. Clients may be concerned that no one would want to hire them, or an employer would not want to accommodate them if they knew they had a mental illness. The employment specialist can help correct some of these beliefs with working with the client and provide examples of other clients who have found employers receptive to them and who have facilitated the attainment of their goals. For clients who do not want to disclose, the employment specialist plays a behind-the-scenes but still active role in helping the client explore different work options, getting prepared and practicing for interviewing, and developing strategies for addressing challenges in the workplace. So right now, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of disclosure, but I wanted you to think about some examples in your own workplace that you could share while I'm reading these. So we're going to start with Beth. So Beth was interested in working as a paralegal at a law firm. After reviewing the different disclosure options, she decided that she wanted her employment specialist to contact prospective employers on her behalf. Beth and her employment specialist then discussed the level of disclosure that she wanted the specialist to use in her conversations at law firms with potential employers. She decided to give permission to her employment specialist to tell the prospective employer, "I work for a human service agency where I help employers find good employees that fit their needs. I work with a young woman who is interested in returning to employment after a period of time of being out of work. She receives services from our agency to help her get back to work. So in this example, Beth gave the employment specialist permission to say that she received services at a human service agency. Beth chose this level of disclosure so that her employment specialist could contact law firms on her behalf, but only revealed little personal information about why Beth is receiving help in her pursuit of a job. So she did not have to mention diagnosis. There's many other things she did not have to mention. So that is one example of how the employment specialist can work with a client with disclosure. The second example is Bill. Bill had a goal of obtaining a job repairing computers. After discussing his career goals with his employment specialist, he decided that he wanted employers to know that he sometimes gets very anxious, to the point that he may need to leave a room for a few minutes to relax. Bill decided it would be important to arrange this in advance to be able to occasionally leave the workroom to cope with his anxiety, and he wanted to make sure he found a job with an employer that would accommodate his needs. So Bill gave permission to his employment specialist to talk to employers on his behalf and to say something like, "I work with a young man who is very interested in obtaining a job repairing computers. I am helping him to find a job that will be a good fit for him. While he is very experienced in this area and very motivated, he sometimes has difficulties sitting in one place for a long period of time, and he becomes anxious. So Bill has developed some coping strategies that are effective in helping him manage his anxiety, and they involve taking 5 minutes to walk around and do some relaxation exercises. I don't think he will always need to do this, but he wants to be upfront with employers about this. As I said, he is very motivated and very eager to learn." So Bill chose this approach so that the potential employers would be aware of an important need for him. Thus, this level of disclosure would let employers know that Bill occasionally has periods of anxiety that he needs to cope with by temporarily leaving the workroom for brief periods of time. And I wanted to see if anybody has examples to share. And if you wanted to, share either verbally or in the chat box, either would be great. But what I was looking at is if any of you have examples of client disclosure situations that maybe help that client to get accommodations on the job, or do you have any examples of when a client did not disclose and that may have affected their job, or anything else with disclosure would be great. And again, if you are on the phone, you can unmute if you'd like, or hit *6. And again, you are able to type in the chat box as well. All right, doesn't look like we have any right now. So, move on. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I hurried. I went too quick, Maria. Okay, Maria says, "I recently called an employer for a client who asked me to disclose his anxiety so that he could open the doors of communication with his new employer and ask for help when he needed." That's awesome. Thank you, Maria. That's awesome. Now wait and see if anybody else has anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in case people are typing, that's kind of a long story, so they might need a second.
No, I apologize, you guys. So I'll wait a little longer.
I can share one verbally while people are typing, or in case they want to jump on. I know that I had a client that originally didn't want to disclose just because they didn't know me. They didn't know what disclosure was. I don't think they had a good understanding, and that was fine. And a couple months into job search, as we talked more about it, I think you gave an example, your last example, of bill or something, and talking through what wording the client wants to use to share information. They're more open to it. So the disclosure might just be, do you want me to share positives about you? So maybe you're on time for meetings, and you're reliable, and you're friendly, and you're dynamic, and you're a self-starter. So for some people, disclosure might just be, do you even want me to share positive things about you, or no disclosure at all? And that might change over time as you develop a relationship with someone, or maybe you transition to look in a different field, or the types of interviews that you're going to are changing. So that's one example I had.
Thank you, Elise. Thank you. All right. And if anybody thinks of any along the way, you can still type in the chat box, and then we could come back to this. But thanks, Maria and Elise. Okay, so some things to consider with disclosure. When the client's symptoms are apparent to an uninformed observer, and this could present an obvious concern to a prospective employer about the client's ability to perform the job, a higher level disclosure may be warranted. For example, if the client has very blunted emotional expressiveness, for example, lack of facial expression or flat voice tone, that could inadvertently convey to a potential employer that the client is not interested in the job. A higher degree of disclosure can enable the employment specialist to meet with prospective employers and to prepare them for their first meeting with the client by explaining a little bit about his or her circumstances and assuring them that the client is interested in the job and capable of doing the job. This meeting can also assure the employer that the employment specialist will be available to help the client succeed at the workplace if needed. Thus, more specific information about the client's challenges may be needed in order to prevent a prospective employer from developing a negative first impression of a client, which could interfere with that person getting hired at a job. Another consideration regarding disclosure is the client's comfort with the employment specialist revealing the information about his or her challenges to a prospective employer. Some clients feel comfortable giving free rein to the employment specialist to provide an employer whatever information would be most beneficial for getting the job or succeeding at work. Other clients may be reluctant for the employment specialist to disclose any information about their challenges, but may be willing to disclose their participation in the employment program. Employment specialists should periodically return to discussing the option of disclosure when working with clients who chose not to disclose but experienced difficulty landing a job. So, if a person, again, going back, if a person does not need accommodations, or they may not have any other areas, that there might be a need for disclosure, then the recommendation is they do not just need to disclose. One thing I do want to stress again, there really is no need to disclose the diagnosis, no need to disclose types of medications a person is taking. The general rule of thumb is only disclose the very minimal information while emphasizing the positive attributes of the client and focusing more on the client and the client's skills and attributes. So, deciding whom to disclose to and when, where, and how much to disclose about one's mental health symptoms are very complex decisions. The decision as to whether a client should disclose to an employer is ultimately the client's personal choice. However, this decision should be made in consultation with the employment specialist after considering the potential advantages and disadvantages of disclosure. In order to ensure that the client's decision about disclosure is as informed as possible, the employment specialist should help the client consider the possible advantages and disadvantages of disclosing. The employment specialist should also explore different options for disclosure, including what is disclosed and by whom. For example, some clients are comfortable disclosing that they are receiving help in the employment program, but prefer not to disclose information about mental health symptoms they have. The following points are important when the employment specialist is helping a client make decisions about disclosure and how the specialist will work with the client. So remember, it is always the client who is the person responsible for making their decisions about disclosure based on his or her goals and preferences about how to achieve them. The employment specialist can encourage the client to get input from other people that may be important to the client's life about whether or not to disclose, such as family members or team members, but ultimately it's up to the client. Clients need to understand how their decision about disclosure will affect how the employment specialist works with them to achieve their school or work goals, including how the employment specialist will help them if they choose not to disclose. Clients may change their mind about disclosure over time and with experience in the employment program. There is no single right answer, and whether the client should disclose in any particular situation, the decision depends on the individual's preference and needs. And I do know many instances where at the beginning of working in particular programs with an employment specialist, a client may have been embarrassed and said, no, I don't want you to disclose anything. But as they worked through the process and they found they were having trouble finding jobs or keeping jobs when they got hired, the clients ultimately had come to the decision to disclose some information so that way they could get some needed accommodations on the job. So with IPS supported employment, we do encourage all the employment specialists to document all disclosure conversations in client files. So we encourage that. Also, remember that disclosure decisions can be revoked and changed at any point in the time by the client. And that is why it's very important to discuss disclosure on multiple occasions, because again, they may change their mind depending on the employer that they are maybe applying to work at or just other situations. And in the Skype box, I have attached 3 different disclosure worksheets that you can use to work with clients. And those are the disclosure conversation tool, the disclosure VCU worksheet, and the disclosure worksheet plan for approaching employers. And I will bring those up in just a moment if we have time. Okay, so I want to mention JAN, which is the Job Accommodation Network. This is I hope that a lot of you already are familiar with this, but this is an excellent website that discusses lots of different types of disabilities and different symptoms and different accommodations that can be used for different symptoms a person may have. This also has some great videos on accommodations in the workplace. I am providing a link to one of the videos here. Unfortunately, our Skype does not allow us to show a video with sound. We can show the video portion, but we cannot show sound. That's why you have the link here. So one of the things to talk about in regard to accommodations is if you do, if our client needs an accommodation, they need to disclose that. Under the ADA, a person can request an accommodation at any time during the application process or while they are employed. They can request an accommodation even if they did not ask for one when applying for the job or after receiving the job offer. So when should a person disclose? In general, they should disclose when they need to request a reasonable accommodation, when they know that there is a workplace barrier that is preventing them, due to a disability, from competing for a job, performing a job, or gaining equal access to a benefit of employment, like an employee lunchroom or employee parking. So while we're on talking about Jan, does anyone in this group use Jan currently, or does anybody have experience using Jan, and has it been useful? And again, here you can type into the chat box, or you can voice this, over the phone, or however you would like. And I'm giving people time to type if they need to.
This is Kelly. I'd like to make a quick plug about something on Jan too that folks might not be aware of. There's a section in there that talks about like supports and different types of supports you can suggest or folks can use, and then it will link you to other resources. So sometimes it might be an app that the person could download on their phone. I've seen some folks that have like really high anxiety or they have trouble focusing, and there's some really, really good apps that they could utilize on the job to help them kind of, center themselves if they're having, a hard time at work or in a moment they just need to maybe focus a little bit more. And so in that case, you wouldn't even necessarily need to disclose to the employer, what is even going on if they can kind of use those tools independently while they're on the job. So I would definitely encourage you guys to check those out if you haven't done so. There's a lot of really, really cool resources out there.
And thank you. I was actually, wasn't sure how much time we would have, but I really wanted to show them, Jan. So I am going to go ahead and bring that up briefly to show you because we are almost finished, but it is a wonderful resource. So I'm going to share my desktop right now. First, can everybody see? I want to make sure everybody can see this. Everybody see where I'm at on Jan?
I can. It says store.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to do is I went to the main site. Well, it's really askjan.org. Now I'm going to go under most popular searches right here where it's accommodations, and you can search multiple ways. But I'm going to do accommodation. Oh, I went to accommodation search to begin with right here. And I'm going to go, let's see here. Hold on a second here.
And Felicia, Zendaya said Jan is one of the most best kept secrets in our field.
It's a great, I use it a lot. So usually you can go, so you can do various different ways. It doesn't look like that's coming up for me. But I usually go to the accommodation. Now I can also go, if you see here, there's just, these are the popular searches. I'm just going to go click on mental health impairments. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to, and then I know because I've done this before, I'm going to click this where it says mental health impairments. Now what you can do is scroll down here about mental health impairments. It's going to give you a little bit of information about the different areas that fall under that: bipolar, borderline, major depression, etc. Keep scrolling down. It's going to talk about different things. accommodating employees, questions to consider, key accommodations. Now here's what is awesome. So for any type of disability, and Jan covers every type of disability, physical, cognitive, mental impairment, every type. So we're in the area of mental illness right now. So you can either look here for accommodation by the specific limitation, or you can look by work-related function. So if you can see here, the limitations they have listed are attentiveness, concentration, control of anger, emotions, etc. So let's just pull up attentiveness, concentration. So when you pull that up, it gives you a lot of different products that might be helpful for that specific symptom. Or it has services, job coaches, or it has strategies. Then when you click this on, you can look up each individual product, and that will take you to specific products, and then it will tell you the areas it helps you with, and the product then is described up here at the top. But I love this website. It is just so helpful, and especially if you have a client that maybe you're having trouble with and you're not sure because of a particular symptom they may be having, you're not sure how to help them. You should definitely use this work site. Now you can also go by a work-related function. So if they're, working, and you can go by, it has here policies. So if they need additional training or time, an aide or assistant, or an attendant, if they need a flexible schedule, you can look up that, or if they're having a lot of stress. So this site will give you a lot of different options of accommodations and ways to help your clients to be successful. And it's very easy to search because you can search multiple ways at the top. Either, the employers can search, the individuals, there's a library, A to Z list, but I find that it's very user friendly. So I am going to need to go back to my PowerPoint. A minute. Okay, I'm back. So just wanted to share that. And then the next slide has a link to another video, and this was disability disclosure video, which I thought was a great video. It features both students and employees with disabilities and how they deal with disclosure. Again, we apologize, we're not able to we can bring the video up, but we can't bring the audio up with it. So if you get a chance to watch this on your own time, that would be something we would advise. The last page are the resources that we also would highly advise you to look at. And Jan is on here. That's the first one with the link. Of course, our agency, Americans with Disabilities Act, the IPS Learning Center, and the U.S. Equal Opportunity Commission. So I'm going to show you those 3 forms that are attachments. A few of them you're probably already going to be familiar with. Let me bring up this one. Can everybody see my screen still?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So I'm bringing up, this one is, oops, let me go back to that. Plan for approaching employers or disclosure of a disability at the workplace. I have a feeling a lot of you on the call are familiar with this. This form comes from the IPS Employment Center, and it is a great form to use, in talking to your clients about disclosure. Another great form that you can use is this disclosure conversation tool form.
Felicia?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Felicia, we see the last slide. We aren't seeing your screen.
Oh, you're not? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, so you'll have to share your screen.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that, everybody. Okay.
It has resources.
Tell me when you can see this disclosure sheet. Can you see this?
It's loading.
Okay, thank you.
We can see it now.
Yeah, we can see
Okay,
it.
so this first form is something that you probably are all familiar with, the plan for approaching the employers or disclosure of a disability at the workplace. This is something we've had for a while that comes from the IPS Learning Center, and this is a great tool that you and your client can work on together to help them to decide what to disclose, if anything. Another good tool that we have is oops, let me go to that one last. Let me go to this one. We have a disclosure conversation tool sheet that is also a great tool in working with your clients. And it has, some different things that you and your client can fill in together, but ultimately, helps your client to decide what to disclose and the pros and cons, etc. And then the other tool is this disclosure decisions to get the job, which is a great worksheet. So it has a lot of different little exercises or questions, I should say, that will help the client to make a choice about disclosure. It gives you different information. It also talks about decide when to disclose, consider the pros and cons, etc. And it gives you a few different exercises as well. So these are great worksheets. And if any of you do not or are not able to retrieve these from this Skype today, just let us know and we can send you any of this information. So I know that it is 1 minute till 2. We very much appreciate you all being here today, and we want to remind you of the next training, which is, Elise, do you have that in front of you?
I do not, but we have next Wednesday, we have a training from 1 to 2 for employment specialists again. And that is going to be a training that Kelly Malik is going to provide. And then on Friday, we have a call just for the supervisors in Ohio.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I see Susan would like some of the information. If anybody else needs the information provided today, please let us know or let your consultant trainer know. Yes, I see. Yep. Yes, Deborah, we will get those, and Whitney, yes, we will get those. Yes, we will. We'll make sure to look at everybody in the chat box who's requesting this, and we'll get that to you all today. Yes, we can do that, Corey. And okay, thanks everybody. We really appreciate you all being here and your participation.